I was interested in human evolution and hoping that humanity would make it. With such technical advancements, how we would emotionally be so back in Plato's cave. Afraid to look at the light, afraid to get beyond the shadows, was startling to me. Since Sir Albert was on the Board of Governors in Hong Kong, and Alicia had been to medical school, I asked if we could go to the psychiatric hospital so we could observe a lecture. While sitting there, they wheeled in a woman who was 17 when she first entered, and now she was 40. They'd never let her out. Alicia was translating into English the Cantonese. So I was getting the drift of this shocking situation. She had been a good girl, but made one misstep. She dated a gambler. What happened was the parents saw her as the bad girl and immediately put her in a mental institution. Doctor, I asked to the chief psychiatrist, I notice you're giving her sodium pentothal. Could you question her about her feelings toward her parents? Like, could you ask if she's angry at her parents for locking her away? His reply was amazing. She's not evil enough to be angry at her parents, this chief psychiatrist said. She's just sick. Whew. I was determined. Doctor, will you please ask her if she's angry at her parents? Reluctantly, he did. She began to say how terrible they treated her, as if she was stuck in time at that 17 years of age, when she had been a good girl, who just one misstep. There was a chill through the room, and they quickly wheeled her away. When it was time to leave, there was a compound, and Alicia and I were walking outside, and we met a number of the patients who were walking around on this sunny day. They said hello, they asked me where I was from, and there was a wonderful sharing between us. The chief psychiatrist came by and said, "What's going on? I mean, how do you know how do they know you? He couldn't conceive of people just communicating and sharing. He walked us to the gate and asked to be remembered to Alicia's parents. And then he looked at me and he said, "I hate my mother! Oh, what did I say?" And he ran away. Back in Toronto, I got a phone call from the publishers. They want me to come into an editorial meeting. When I arrived, they said to me that they want to say that a big producer found me and put the play on in London. But there was no big producer. It was done on a shoestring. What do you want to fib for? It'll impress the reader, the publisher said. The whole point about the book is to invite people to get beyond symbols and beyond distortion. I would prefer if we could sort of stick to the facts if we can. They also wanted to add certain sexual scenes to titillate the reader. Look, that's not necessary for me. I think there were enough things that happened. Like Aunt Dorothy's first husband pulls me into the shed from age 4 to 6 and sexually assaults me. My aunt finds out and divorces him. My other aunt, the angel, labels me her guinea pig Until age 7, she says she will marry me when I grow up. I don't know that guinea pigs are used for experiments. During those years, our family doctor gives her morphine for severe menstrual cramps. Come here, little guinea pig, she says, pretending that we are married. So, let's ease up on any kind of sexual extremes. They didn't like that. They also said, we don't want you talking to strangers anymore, Justin. I said, what do you mean, don't talk to strangers? Well, we're starting a promotional campaign to turn you into an internationally acclaimed guru, Krishnamurti style. I didn't know who Krishnamurti was at the time. You don't want me to talk to strangers? I mean, that's how I learn to share with people. Who's a stranger? I mean, as we get to know each other, nobody's a stranger. Huh. They're going to think about it. You want your book published, don't you, Justin? You better go along with us. There was trouble. I got another phone call from Mark Slade, the senior representative of the National Film Board, who had invited me to those 2 programs. I've heard, he said, that you're doing a lot of speaking. Several of my colleagues know about your show, and I'd like to experience it. They suggest we do a documentary. Sure. Would you come to Montreal and present it? Of course I will. I took the train to Montreal, and in the washroom I got into my Joker's costume, took a cab to the Film Board headquarters, and there was Mark Slade alone. It was a large room, and I wondered why others weren't there to experience it. He wants to see it himself? Okay. I shared the cycle. And when I was finished, he walked over and put his arms around me. That was beautiful, Justin, he said. Now, I don't want you to put your book out. I don't want you to do your play ever again. And no more talk on label liberation. So what do you mean? I got thousands of letters. People want those buttons. I don't want you to put your book out, your play, or anything on label liberation. Instead, I want you to come and work with me at the Film Board and be my lover. And the 2 of us will be very powerful together. You know Norman McLaren, he said? Well, he's lovers with another senior representative, and we'll be more powerful than them. As he moved his hands down to my ass, I remember thinking, he must think he's massaging my back, and his hands have accidentally slipped. I started to have an amnesia. It meant a lot, having gone from grade 1 to those courses, and it changed my life. I forgot what had happened. When I returned to Toronto, there was a letter from Mark. Alicia and I began to read it. Dear Adam Keith, Justin Thomas, you see how I have named you fourfold. That's a fourfold numbing, which I requite or consummate by enfolding you in myself. At the moment, I take you into my words. You dissolve numb in these words, these symbols, and come alive again in me. That is requital. It is a poor requital if you compare it to coming alive in my arms or my lips. I wish I had studied the classics, I said to Alicia. I don't understand what he's talking about. Then I got a call from him. He's coming to Toronto, especially to see me, to discuss my salary and when I'm coming to Montreal. He wants to have dinner with me. How about coming to my place, and Alicia will make some delicious minchi? No? He wants me to come to his hotel. Okay. When I arrive, he's been drinking. He immediately rushes toward me and tries to kiss me. Mark, I really appreciate everything you've done for me. inviting me to these programs and inviting me to do the research, but the research is done, and I'm wondering why you'd want me to suppress it. I mean, it'll be useful for me to share it with other people. Before I know it, he's tearing at my suit and trying to push me on the bed, and he's holding my mouth, and he's unzipping his fly, and I begin to say, "No, Mark! No! No!" And I run out, and he threatens to kill me. I found my way home in shock. I couldn't believe it. I had to block it out, though I had to explain it to Alicia when she saw my torn clothes. I cried for several days, and then a note arrived from Mark. In it, it said, "Whom I love, him I slay." Maybe he meant it when he said he's going to kill me. And then I had flashbacks of my mother saying, "Kill him, Harold! Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" And Harvey saying, "If you're ever successful in life, I will kill you. Eat shit and die." A week went by, and I knew I had to stop crying. I went to the crisis center where I was doing my volunteer work, and I was there alone when a guy called. He said, "I don't want to speak to a guy. Put a woman on the line." "Just a moment, please," I said, and clicked down. And then I heard this voice say, "Hello, this is Sherry. How can I help you?" And the guy started telling his story, how his best friend took his wife away, and he had been placed up by his mother, and his brother had always been placed down, and suddenly he was seeing the other side of the coin. Sherry helped him with the invisible stopwatch. He even called me back to thank me for putting Sherry on the line. He was fine, but I wasn't. Ever since then, Sherry has been with me, and compulsively, totally out of control, she has spoken to thousands and thousands of men. Out of fear, I fled Canada and went to the States. I was in a cafe, and a very attractive lady sitting next to me began to talk. She told me she was working with a small university, and after a couple of hours of sharing, she said, "Would you like to get a degree?" And I said, "I can't afford going to a university." And she said, "I'm talking about a scholarship. I want you to meet the president of our university." I met him in La Jolla, and I got a scholarship to get my BA, MA, and PhD. But a degree is only a degree of a whole, but it gave me something to do, something for Sherry and I to do. Because without being able to stop, she talked to these guys over and over again, probing, trying to get to the heart of why so many people are hurt and angry and abusive. Was I trying to figure out what was going on with Mark? Was I trying to understand my father or Harvey? Or all these bullies that used to beat me up? Or was it the convalescent home where I experienced the rape of that guy and all those people sitting on me? Whatever it was, Sherry was a bomb. B-A-L-M. "Hello. I'm 5'5½", long, blondish red hair, blue-green eyes," she would say on these dating lines. "Do you like a submissive girl? Someone who could be your sex slave?" "Oh, you do? Wonderful. Well, I can't meet you the first time, but I have a friend named Jay. He's about 5'7", 140 pounds, and if you go over to his place, I'll have him blindfolded, lying on the floor, and you can come in and picture him the sum total of every girl and every guy who's ever pissed you off. You can strangle him if you want, not fully, but get your feelings free. And then, once you do that, then call me. And if you want me to be your sex slave, I will. And that's what happened. Figure about 9,000 men came over, fortunately not all at once. And they would process their feelings. I would share the wheel of man and woman, and I would listen, as Sherry had. And we both found out that every man she spoke to had a mother, a sister, an aunt, a babysitter, someone who had physically, sexually, verbally abused them. This isn't what we're told. Men are supposed to be brutes. Women are supposed to be the angels. Just a minute now. I had read somewhere where Senator Cools had said, behind every man who abuses a woman is a mother who's abused the man. And a lot of women livers were very upset. Well, don't women have to get to the point where they do see men as persons first? Just as men have to work through their projections to see women as persons first. Sherry was helping me. And these men, in working through their rage, allowed me to begin to feel my feelings, which I was shut off from. And little by little, I started to heal. My foster mother, Marie, had died, and my foster father, Mr. Thomas, who had been very devoted, writing to me literally every day, decided to return to Toronto. And there was an article in the paper there about Dr. Cornelia Wilbur, who had worked with Sybil and helped her integrate her multiple personality. I was very candid with everyone about my disassociation. And several therapists had said to me, "What wonderful research you're doing, Justin. You can see all angles of what people are working through." Well, I don't know about that. I wanted to be me again and not split off. Well, I realize that to the degree people have a public and private split, everyone is disassociated. I called Dr. Wilbur. "This is Dr. Thomas," I said, which was the truth. "I'm dealing with a multiple personality disassociation. Is there any way I can come down to Kentucky and meet with you?" She said yes. She thought I meant a patient. When I got there, I clarified that I was the person dealing with the disassociation. I had very little money, and the motel near where her office was didn't charge me. She'd spend 3 or 4 hours a day for 2 weeks with me, helping me remember what happened with Mark Slade. I had totally tuned it out. Gradually, the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. Dr. Wilbur said, "It's really quite amazing that you've survived the abuse from your mother from the day you were born. I don't want you speaking to her anymore unless she begins to recognize what she has done to you." "Well, Dr. Wilbur," I said, "I know it's not what's done to me, it's how I handle what's been done." She asked me to really hear her and not to speak to my mother. "Okay," I said. Dr. Tuckty tried to get me to do the same thing. And there was this pull that I will break. I promised, but Sherry didn't. When I got back to California, Sherry immediately telephoned my mother. "Oh, hi. I'm a friend of Justin's, and he would like to kind of help heal the mother-son relationship. Would you mind if I call you, since I'm working in the field of psychology? Maybe we can talk several times a week." My mother was delighted, and for 3 years, Sherry called at the cheap rates and spoke to my mom. My mother always wanted a daughter and was so pleased. One telephone call turned out to be very interesting. My mother said, "Sherry, I want you to promise me that you'll never tell Justin what I'm about to say. because I've never told anyone. Sherry promised. Mother sighed a deep sigh. Sherry, my sister Dorothy died without ever knowing the secret. When I was a little girl and my mother was pregnant with Dorothy, my father abandoned the family, went to New York to establish himself as a playwright and actor in Yiddish theater there. Well, he met a married actress, and they had an affair. And when she went back to her husband, he shot her. She must have been a good actress. She played dead. And then he turned the gun on himself and killed himself. What a terrible, terrible thing for my father to have done. If you want to take your own life, okay. But to try and kill someone else, what could be more evil? In that moment, I had an epiphany. Yes, my mother really believed that her father was evil. And when her mother started calling her the devil, the dubik, and the jinx, my mother took those labels literally. So then, when I was a child, in order to prevent me from having anything to do with reading or the arts like her father did, she would say, if you read, something will happen to your brain and you'll die. Huh. In her distorted way, she was trying to protect me. Huh. That was really crazy making. But was I driven crazy or driven sane?